here at 7 o'clock already, maybe 7:01 by now. Mrs. Milton, if you will call the roll, I'd appreciate it. Here.
Here.
Present.
Mr. James. Here. Mr. Malone. Here. Ms. Nichols. Here. Mr. Bono. Here. Mr. Talbot.
Here.
Mr. Delavan.
Here.
I have a quorum present, Mr. Chairman.
Let's rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, welcome again, and thank you for that. And we are going to start today's business with some public communications, and we're going to start them off with a recognition of former Town Council Chairman Rob Orris. And we're still using cheap frames, Rob. You know, I know. Well, you know, we're watching the people's money, and Lord knows, I'm sure you could get a better frame at the dollar store, but maybe not. Rob Orris, and I see your lovely bride, Monica, has joined you, and I appreciate that, Monica. It's a date night. We'd like to recognize you once again more formally, Rob. The last time we met, you were chairman. I believe it was maybe October, November. I can't remember which one of those meeting nights, but we did have an opportunity to shower you with our thanks and gratefulness for the service you had provided, not only the town, but certainly the council and management within Town Hall and the public at large. And we're doing so tonight in a more formal sense, mainly just to get a look at you after you've been off the job for at least a month now, but also to give everyone else, if they want to say another few more kind words, the opportunity to do so. I'll be holding mine to a minimum, but I will start out with a certificate of recognition for you, Rob, and I'm going to go down to the dais if you'd like to join me. You can keep on your mask. I'll probably read this without it, but we'll take it from there. Good to see you. Looking pretty svelte.
I don't know about that. Big jackets do a lot for you.
Okay. You know what svelte means? Okay. What do I do here, guys?
I think you're okay on that one.
This one. This one. Perfect. Okay, Mr. Orris. This is a certificate of recognition for Robert J. Orris Jr. Whereas Robert J. Orris Jr. served the Cheshire community as a town councilor since 2013 with energy and enthusiasm, and whereas Mr. Orris provided 6 years of leadership as the council chairman, working with his fellow councilors to ensure the highest quality of town operations and financial standing. And whereas Mr. Orris fostered compromise and collaboration and was dedicated to acting in the best interests of the taxpayers, and whereas Mr. Orris encouraged responsible economic growth and development for the betterment of the entire community. Now, therefore, I, Tim Slocum, Mayor and Chairman of the Town Council, on behalf of the entire Town Council and all the citizens of Cheshire, by this certificate of recognition, gratefully acknowledge the significant positive impact Rob Orris has had as a town councilor and leader for the town of Cheshire. Dated this 8th day of February. Rob, a pleasure. I don't know if you want to say a few words. While I'm going to walk over here, you can, I don't know if this will go with us, but we actually have something to present you. Maybe we should do a presentation and then you can say a few words.
Perfect.
Yeah, we didn't rehearse this. Right here.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, just one point, I'm sure Rob will remember, a common phrase that Chairman Orris used, especially during the budget, was a deck chair off the Titanic. We thought it would be appropriate if there was some way we could, send a dive team down in the Atlantic and maybe find an actual deck chair. Could we bring him possibly a real Titanic deck chair? Turns out that's impossible. But we did find the next best thing, and we thought Mr. Slocum, if you'd like a chair for a chairman.
This is a blanket from the Titanic.
That's beautiful. You have to test your motorcycle.
If you want to sit down, they might want to see if
I think I'll wait on that. There you go. Then you can start the roasting, right? Do I get to say a few words?
I
now?
think that would be great.
Yeah. Can I take my mask off?
I would love
After
to
you
see
leave?
your full face.
I don't know about that. Thank you, everybody. As you know, if I get an opportunity to say a few words, I never really pass it up. And this is the one thing I do miss, is being able to speak to all of you and to the community especially. But I want to say thank you first and foremost to my family, which I didn't do last time. My wife and I were raised on giving back. And from the day we moved to Cheshire, we both decided it was really important for us to give back to this community. And while I may be here getting the accolades, like I said to you guys the last time, this is really not about Rob Orris. It's about all of us. It's about everybody in this community that gives back. This community is driven with volunteerism. And Rob Orris is not important to that. It's all of us together. So I want to thank Monica for all of your support for many years. I know there were many nights she'd roll her eyes and say, oh my God, you got another budget meeting and we couldn't go out to dinner one night, or maybe I missed a birthday or something. And so she deserves a lot of kudos from me because, she's really my mainstay and I love her dearly. And I want to thank you, Monica, from the bottom of my heart that you've always supported everything that I've done in life. And this was no different. So thank you very much. And my three kids, they've always supported me as well. We have three beautiful children, as most of you know. They're all pretty raised up this point, and we've done our job. And Monica and I couldn't be more proud of the children that we raised in this community as a community. I know all of you have wonderful children as well. And part of the reason why our children are what they are, well, I hope Monica and I had a role in it. It's because they grew up in a wonderful community like the town of Cheshire, which is very supportive of them as youth. And so I would be remiss without thanking the community for helping Monica and I raise our family here, because that's really important. I don't really miss you guys. There hasn't been 5 minutes where I said, wow, I miss a meeting. So the timing was good for me. And I really appreciate the opportunity to have served with all of you. It's been a highlight of my life to give back. This is one of the highlights of those highlights, to serve with all of you, culminating with my role as council chair. You guys have always been supportive. We haven't always agreed on every issue, but one of the things we all did in the end was collaborate and move forward with things that we knew were in the best interest of this community. And I thank you all from the bottom of my heart for that. As I've always said, the best governance is when every one of us has a meaningful seat at that table. And I hope it's continuing, because it's something that I'm most proud of. I don't care whether you're an R or a D or an independent or whatever. If you've got a good idea, it should be heard. And this community deserves to make sure that every elected official has a meaningful voice. And that's something that I insisted on when I sat at the dais. And, I hope it continues. I know, Mr. Slocum, you're a good man. You've served this town a lot longer than I have. So I'm sure you're going to continue along that breath. But I just want to thank you for giving me that opportunity, because it really has been a highlight of my life. So that's it, folks. Thank you very much. I do appreciate it. And God bless you all.
Thank you, Rob. Thanks, Rob.
Thank you so much for this. What happened?
It's just for show.
It's just a rental. Thank you all.
Thank you, Rob. Okay, this brings us on to the Cub Scouts. All Scouts, you're right. I only got through the Cub Scouts. Anyway, this is a proclamation of Scouting Recognition Day, February 8th, 2022. Whereas Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts of America are the world's largest organizations dedicated to helping girls and boys everywhere build character, gain skills for success in the real world, and develop conviction about their own potential self-worth, which will serve them well into their lives. And whereas Scouting has helped millions of young people to confront difficult situations and make responsible decisions, and whereas Scouting instills civic values and virtue of young people, which are integral with the ideals, morals, and principles which America embodies, and whereas Scouting in Cheshire has contributed to the beautification of our town in the form of numerous projects which enrich the appearance and quality of life in Cheshire. Now, therefore, I, Tim Slocum, Mayor and Chairman of the Town Council, on behalf of the Town Council and all the citizens of Cheshire, by this proclamation, do hereby recognize Tuesday, February 8th, as Scouting Day, and acknowledge the scouting organizations and all their young participants and volunteers, dated this 8th day of February. Thank you, Scouts. We do appreciate you, truly. And with that, Sean, I believe this brings you to the fore with a report on COVID.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In your town manager's report, you'll see the first couple of pages, as traditionally we do each month, is a COVID-19 update. Local positivity rates for Cheshire have fallen significantly over the last 3 weeks since the peak that we experienced on January 14th at a 22.7% local positivity rate. This is consistent with trends we're seeing statewide as the spike resulting from the spread of Omicron variant subsides. As of today, Tuesday, February 8th, our local estimated positivity rate over the last 7 reporting days was 8.6%. That's 136 positives in Cheshire out of 1,577 tests. That's down from about 16.8% last month. You'll see the rolling 3-day average in the yellow line in the graph below, which currently over the average of the last 3 days stands at 9.5%. But you can see the pretty clear spike from the Omicron variant and the resulting downturn. Our local case rates per 100,000 do remain at the red level, although they are down to 95 cases per 100,000 here in Cheshire, down from 137.7 last month. To date, 85.74% of Cheshire residents of all ages have received at least one vaccination dose. That's an increase of 1.1% over last month's report. Just a reminder of testing locations. There are over 94 testing locations at the link in your report in Cheshire's region 2. Also links to the Hartford Healthcare and Yale New Haven Health testing and appointment sites locally. Reminder that the town has been giving out free N95 masks from the state of Connecticut delivery that we received at now 2 locations in town during regular business hours at the Senior Center and at the Cheshire Library. Residents with an ID or utility bill can pick up 1 mask each for each member of their household. At-home test kits, just an update. Consistent with the governor's directions, the town has prioritized remaining rapid at-home antigen tests for local vulnerable populations, congregate settings, including Cheshire Rehab, Marbridge, and Neelam Park. Kits were also provided to the Cheshire Housing Authority, local churches, group homes, and clients at the Cheshire Food Pantry. Kits are also available as needed on a case-by-case basis for individuals with mental, physical, intellectual, or other developmental disabilities through Cheshire Human Services. Remaining tests are being reserved for critical municipal workforce, with a portion reserved for future COVID variant waves if needed. And attached to this report, you'll also see the Cheshire Public Schools policy and associated metrics with respect to masks in schools. Again, that's very late breaking, as the superintendent released just earlier this afternoon. But that policy is attached. I won't go through it here, but if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out or ask them now. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Sean. Are there any members of the public that would like to come before the council for anything that's not specifically on our agenda, where you could actually speak to that later in the agenda? I recognize a young lady in the back. If you'd like to come to the microphone. Um, Yes, the podium up here, and for the purposes of our record keeping, we need to have your name and address, each of you that chooses to speak.
Okay, so my name is Tammy. Is it okay to take this off?
Absolutely.
Sorry. Yep. My name is Tammy Jackson, and our address is 615 West Johnson Ave, Suite 202, Cheshire. And then Julie, you're going to talk. No, she needs her name and address. She needs name and address.
I'm Julianne Marks, and I live at 6 Bradley Brook Drive in North Granby, Connecticut. Marks, M-A-R-K-S. Yes.
And the address again?
6 Bradley Brook
Bradley Brook. Okay.
Drive in North Granby, Connecticut.
The others are just going to say hello. Do you need that?
No,
Okay.
that's not necessary.
No. Okay, so
Thank
hi,
you.
everyone. First of all, I just wanted to say it's an honor to even be able to speak with you guys tonight, and we are very humbled to be here. So the name of our agency is Fun to Be Free. We all have our little shirts on. We wanted to bring those. So my name is Tammy Jackson. I am the owner. We provide in-home supports to children with autism. And we also work with adolescents, teenagers, and young adults as well. Many of our clientele, our kiddos, have multiple diagnoses, not just autism. And so what I'm going to do before I get into more, I'm going to introduce my phenomenal all-woman-led team. So this is my clinical director, Julie Marks, and she's going to say some statistics that are relevant for Cheshire and us. And then we have Gabby. Come to the mic. Gabby is one of our clinical assistants.
Hi, I'm Gabriela Porto, and I'm a Spanish speaker.
Yep.
So I help with that out.
Thank you. And this is our other clinical assistant and soon to be BCBA as well, full-time clinician. This is Janae.
Hello.
And we just kind of I just wanted to bring the whole team.
Janae Camby, Camby. No problem.
Okay, so I only introduced one person with the last name because I was so nervous I forgot the other two, just putting that out there. And we did have another member who couldn't make it with us today. So what we do, why we do. First of all, I lived at 150 Victoria Drive in Cheshire for many, many years. And when when COVID first started in 2020, a lot of agencies that do what we do stopped providing services because obviously they were scared of in-home supports. And at that time, I realized there was a need, and I said, we're going to start our own company. We're going to do this. And it has been an amazing journey, but we have really struggled with COVID and how it has impacted us. When we first started, we really did a great job mitigating some of those situations. We were able to use telehealth, which is great, but it's very limited to a lot of kiddos. They just don't respond. And it's much better to have in-person therapy. And one of the things that I was toying around with was, where were we going to start a business? I was a Cheshire resident, but I was on the Southington side, and we were looking at buildings, honestly, at that point before we really got hit, to kind of start a clinic. We wanted to start an ABA clinic. And ironically, during a lot of the political stuff, and, I joined the Facebook page for Southington, and I joined the Facebook page for Cheshire. And I just saw such a difference, in our opinion, between how Cheshire embraces its community, all of its community, as opposed to what I was reading in the Southington Facebook. And we were so honored to be part of the march here that the high school students put on. We were part of the Black Lives Matter march. We've been involved as much as we can within the community, and we're honored to have decided to hang our shingle here, so to speak. So that's why we chose to be with Cheshire, because we really believe in the community, and we believe in just the people here and the direction that it's going and the inclusivity. It's beautiful. So that's why we're in Cheshire. The problem we're having is to continue to serve our kiddos here. With the Omicron, anytime we get a variant, we are out for days. If it's just the child, we're out for 10 days, 15 days. If it's the staff, we're out. And so if we can't provide the services that are prescribed, we're considered a medical field. We're outpatient therapy. And if we can't provide the prescribed amount of hours that child needs to be successful, obviously that child's not getting the treatment. And as a lot of people know, with autism, the younger you start, the better. And the more treatment that can happen at an early age, the better. There is a window. I mean, obviously we all can always learn, but the more learning that happens at that younger age, that 3 to 6 year old, the better the trajectory is. And so without being, that's our biggest fear. It's not so much losing the company. It is not being able to give the treatment to these kids in the time that they need it, which could impact their particular lives forever. And so we are humbly kind of asking support from you guys to help us continue to provide supports and services and to hopefully get the clinic going for the Cheshire families here.
So the support you seek is what? This is my curiosity only
Sure.
because you obviously represent an important community. There's no question about it. We often speak to different things. We're not a chamber of commerce. We're
Right.
also not the school system where some of these activities take place.
Yes.
So what is a role that you think we could play where we could be of assistance
So, I mean, the elephant in the room.
within the time we have?
Right. I mean, yes, fiscally is where we really need support in trying able to expand our services and being able to hire more staff. We need an influx of staff all the time because what we do typically happens after school hours. So, a lot of our families, they come home like 3 or 4, and then our staff come in and help them for like 3 or 4 hours, depending on what's been prescribed and what the need is of the family. But if we can't really afford to bring on new staff because we are fee for service. So basically we get reimbursed by the government. We are a Medicaid provider primarily. We do take the other insurance companies, but we get our reimbursement from them. And so there's no monies up front to train staff, to hire staff. So it's kind of like we wait till we get a case and then we try and get a staff. We're just not able to meet the needs of the community because of the fiscal concerns of being able to front load that staff so that we have enough people to provide these things. Also, the clinic, being able to either partner with an early intervention program here in Cheshire or even school consult with the schools. We would really like to do that. It will increase the amount of kids we can reach. And also will be another revenue stream where if the in-home support starts to waver a little bit, we have the clinic that can still service kids. And we have, the early intervention piece if we can partner with the schools here.
Well, I think basically you've sort of brought an answer to me anyway, for where we could possibly direct you. And since we do have through our school system, birth to 3 programs, early intervention programs, things that are obviously taxpayer funded at certain levels, there may be referrals that could come about through the school system. And my suggestion would be, because that's really outside of our purview in my estimation, that you could engage in some conversations with the Board of Education. And I would start with the business office as opposed to the board itself.
Sure.
Only because I think you could have more productive conversation and they could set a better table for you, I think. And that's where I would feel our weakness is up here as well. This you could be better served, at least initially, on a staff basis.
Awesome.
If that makes sense.
Yes, no, absolutely.
They're located across the street, and I'm not sending you across the street.
Sounds like you're sending me across the street.
But they're pretty close to town hall, but they
Okay.
do have their own parking. So you think that's fair? Okay. I really do thank you. Many of us are aware of autism in our community, so it's something that is near and dear, and we know it's a big deal. So thank you for your efforts.
Thank you. It's been an honor to speak with you all.
Our pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, Can we give you some brochures?
Sure.
Would that be okay? Oh, and grab the bag. I'm sorry, there was one thing I forgot. So it's kind of a joke, but not. We really can't afford to have like what we call swag, like this, our shirts, even our staff bought. And so I wanted to give you guys just a little mug or something, but we could only afford stickers. So when you wash it, the sticker's coming off. So.
That's fine. We don't need swag. Thank you so much. Oh, you shouldn't have. You shouldn't have. Thank you very much. Are there any members of the community, other members of the community present that would like to have an opportunity to speak to the council? Okay. Well, seeing none, we'll move on to the approval of the minutes for the regular meeting of January 11th, 2022, and the minutes of the special meeting of January 25th, 2022, with corrections.
Move as amended. Second.
Thank you, Mr. Talbot. Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Colleagues, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries unanimously for approval. Okay, Mr. Bauer, we're at the consent calendar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Be it resolved that the Cheshire Town Council approves Resolution 020822-1, the consent calendar for February 8, 2022. Second.
Second,
Mr.
I'll
Jake
recognize
seconded.
Sandy Pavano for the second for that. Is that fair? Is that correct? Okay. Okay, all those in favor of consent? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, guys. This brings us to items removed from consent, none were, so we move on to old business, and we're going to start off with the adoption of the Blight Prevention Ordinance. And I do want to preface one comment, because I noticed in the Cheshire Herald, they just simply had an article on blight prevention, and they mentioned we were having a public hearing on Blight Prevention Ordinance this evening. And again, it was not a public notice that they were referencing it to. They simply made a mistake. There is no public hearing. However, if anyone is here and has some questions before we actually act upon this, we will certainly take any of those questions or comments prior to our vote. So I just wanted you to be aware of that before Mr. Barwi Veliber introduces the subject. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Be it resolved that the Town Council hereby adopts the Blight Prevention Ordinance new as recommended by the Ordinance Review Committee and as presented. Oh, sorry. Be it adopt
We have a
Resolution
motion.
020822-2.
Okay, so we have a motion. I'll recognize the second was Mr. Talbot. Is that what I saw? Thank you. Discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This, it's been a long time that we've been talking about this ordinance and the possibility of adopting a blight prevention ordinance. We recognize that, we had a long public hearing back in October of 2021. We had lots of good feedback and comments from the public, took those comments and concerns very seriously. The Ordinance Review Committee made changes to address some of those concerns, and those are people who sent emails to create what I would call the December version of the draft. Around that January, the town hired a new town planner, Mike Glidden, and he jumped right in and gave some very helpful and useful feedback based on his experience as a town planner and an enforcement officer in other municipalities. And the current version incorporates many of his ideas. So we thank Mike as well as Attorney D'Onofrio for their contributions to this ordinance. Also, we recognize some of the concerns and about that were raised at the public hearing, and we took those into consideration and worked very hard to deal with those concerns to make this, we think, an ordinance that addresses the issues facing town, but also addresses the concerns raised by the public regarding overreaching and other issues. So with that, I would, do you want me to go through and discuss some of some of the changes which had been proposed?
I think that makes sense, because I think those that made some suggestions will probably remember that and
Right.
would love to hear it.
Perfect. Well, thank you. We'll go through quickly. Obviously, the issue regarding the definitions. Most importantly, there was the issues of the state of disrepair becoming dilapidated. Some of the issues that had come up or concerns were the things about maybe some regarding torn screens or rust and other decay. The screens were removed as an issue, the rust and other decay, we took that into consideration and realized, is there some way to better determine what it is that's going to be the trigger for what is in a state of disrepair? And we came to the decision that that was discussed to be in serious degradation or disrepair. And so that is something that is going to be factored in. So that those definitions, F, and actually we removed one definition, which was helpful. Also, under section N, this is where one of the things that we took into consideration with Mike Glidden, we had, it was determined that the blight prevention officer, building official, and director of health determines that the property is in condition and poses a serious threat to safety, health, and general welfare of the community. And to that, the committee, Ordinance Review Committee, decided that taking his input into consideration, we've added the fire marshal and the police department to that. And I may have a minor adjustment to this when we get to that. But we added the fire marshal and the police department as other departments that can determine when there is a serious threat to safety, health, and welfare. The other addition was section G. In this, 7G was removed. It was struck to incorporate it into the new, what will become paragraph 9. And as a result of that, the other letters in that section 7 were then relettered. And when we get to section 9, I want to thank Town Planner Glidden for his input in this. This new section 9, which is the right to appeal, clarifies and more explicitly discusses the appeal process and incorporates G from above. So we removed it from G, inserted it, incorporated into this section. And this is not a material change to the prior draft, but really just a consolidation of other matters that were already in the draft and the process that's going to be addressed. And with that, those are the changes from what was appeared at the original public hearing.
Was the other item that you were alluding to in N, where police department was to be replaced potentially?
Yes, and with that, my recommendation or my suggestion would be that we amend this resolution to, instead of say police department, it says police chief.
Okay.
Just that way it makes it consistent that the people listed in that list are all official, their office titles, not necessarily. And that was a great observation from a local resident who suggested that. So.
Okay. The chief didn't recommend it.
No, chief might not be so thrilled with that suggestion, but
okay. It might be nice to hear from other members of the committee, just in case they have.
Committee with Mr. Taub and Mr. Veliber. We spent a long time on this. At the end of the day, we're not going to try to tell people what they can and can't do with their property, but we will do so if we feel there's unsafe or it's impacting the values of other people's property. One of the things we took out of one of the examples was rip screens, because I think people were focusing on that we're going to we're going to slap a blight ordinance on you because you have a rip screen. That wasn't our intention, and that is not our intention. Our intention is to take care of some of the serious blight we have. And it's not a lot, but there's enough out there that we feel it needs to be addressed and taken care of. And I want to thank my colleagues who spent many hours going through this, along with Attorney D'Onofrio, who has experience in other towns with this. And I think his guidance helped us create this ordinance that I think is very good. Now, is it perfect? No, it's never going to be perfect. But I think what we have here is something that gives it teeth so that we can have an officer go in and try to address these issues. And I appreciate all the input from the public last year when they came in, overwhelmingly majority were in favor of this, and it was clear that they want something like this. So I'm totally in favor of this, and I plan on voting in favor of this, and I'm hoping that it can clean up some of the areas that need to be addressed. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This certainly has been a lengthy process. If you all remember, it began back several years ago with an unsafe premise order. And what we realized was that, and we're all certainly well aware of a number of properties in Cheshire that we would like to see taken care of. So what we realized was that the unsafe premise order did not give the fire marshal the ability to go in and cause repairs or improvements to be made on any given property. We have spent a lot of time with, over the course of 2 different town attorneys now. Mr. D'Onofrio's help was incredibly valuable to us in this process. I want to thank my colleagues, Chairman Veliber and Mr. Walsh, for their perseverance on this as well. I absolutely will support this tonight. 2 people I have to thank, and one of them is here tonight. Mrs. Sliz is here, who has followed this process for a long time, as has Mrs. DeMauro, and I'm sure she's watching from home tonight. So thank you to them for sticking with us on this and for their patience as well. We have a product that will address the issues that we're all familiar with, and understand too that the citizens that are not in favor or were not in favor at a public hearing when we had one a while ago, we still have the ability to address their concerns as this gets rolled out. I don't envision that this is the final version of the Blight ordinance. This is a great start, but there's work to be done. Let's get this on the books. Let's address the properties that we all know about, and then we'll go from there. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Talbot. Anybody else before I engage the public in questions they might have? Is there any member of the public, before we do take a vote, that wants to speak to this or ask a question? Yes, please go to the mic, and I know you've been introduced, but.
Judith Sliz, 570 Payne Drive. I would like to thank Mr. Talbot, Mr. Veliber, Mr. Walsh, and all of you who spent time, many hours on this ordinance, and of course the town attorney, the town planner. I really am very grateful. I think it will help preserve our property values and our neighborhoods, our town that we care so deeply about. So, thank you for all the work you did in drafting this and revising it and hearing from all of us. And I would just want you to know that we appreciate all your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Liz. Please.
Hi, I'm Jim Doheny, 86 Chipman Drive. Doheny. I wanted to say thank you to the council and to the committee and to Attorney Veliber and everyone for the effort. I know it was a real pain. I just also wanted to say that just the fact that this was in the works created more conversation and dialogue with some of our neighbors. I mean, I had been in contact with them relentlessly, nicely, but persistently. And just knowing that this was looming, he's already started to make efforts to clean up his property and hire people, which he should have done a couple of years ago, but be it as may, I appreciate it very much, and I want to say thank you. That's all.
I think to that point exactly, I'll make a comment. I'm hopeful that when this ordinance is voted upon, that's exactly what will happen, that through, public knowledge that there is an ordinance in place, there may be some deliberate efforts on the owners of some of these properties, which might just sort of dissipate and turn our problem away from that particular property owner. I'm hopeful that that can happen, because this, again, is a process the town is undertaking, which, is somewhat uncomfortable and contentious. I think that's why a lot of us have, wanted to spend as much time on this as possible, get it right, because we know it's not a pleasantry. Got enforcement actions that have to take place, and, puts people in uncomfortable places, which is something I've certainly been reluctant to do. But I will be supporting this, because I do think there's just some very, very obvious offenders that just, need to know this is in place. So if there's nothing else, I will call for a vote on this. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Opposed? This motion carries unanimously.
Oh, good Lord. Mr. Chairman, if I could just thank you all, to the council members. Thank you for your a lot of deliberation on this over the long time, and I appreciate, and I think the town will appreciate this vote. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Okay, we move on to the school modernization update, and Ms. Nichols is going to bring us up to date.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Following that expansive effort to get the Blight ordinance together reminds me how important it is to get things right. And even if it takes some time and some effort on behalf of all of the volunteers and the people, we need to work together, and school modernization is certainly one of those. And you all who've been following it know we've started this with the Modernization Committee, and most recently, the Board of Education voted in favor of recommending what we are now calling the Cheshire Public Schools Next Generation Plan, Phase 1. And indeed, it is part of a phased project. The project, as it was presented and approved by the Board of Education, and which is before us tonight to approve or not, it includes the building of 2 new schools: Norton School on the Norton School campus, a new school, and a new North End Elementary School, which will replace Chapman School and Darcy School. And the following phases will address the other schools in town. These schools will be kindergarten through sixth grades. As a result of that, the School Modernization Committee has been disbanded as an official committee, but currently there's a group of staff and officials in town that are working together to see that all the phases of this are in concert, and we're keeping track of all the things. The next project is to apply for the school funding grant through the state of Connecticut, which will happen in June. And to that effort, we were on a call, Chairman Slocum and I representing the council, Sean Kimball, the town manager, Jeff Solon, Andrew Martelli, our town economic development director, and Tony Perugini, chair of the board, and a couple of 2 or 3 people from the state of Connecticut Office of OSCGR. Help me, Sean, the Office of School Grant
Construction and Grants.
Construction Grants. We had met with them earlier in the process with the School Modernization Committee, and this time there was a new group of people. Unfortunately, the running of that department has been slightly upset by some unfortunate issues going on in the state, and the previous director is no longer the director. And so we're learning to adapt to some of the new rules perhaps that will be coming out. Very successful call we had this week to determine the process for us to apply for that grant in June. Some of the brief things that they told us were that we are going to need to provide more current enrollment figures, and we knew that already because the enrollment is already growing faster than we anticipated. They are going to request from us very detailed specs on the education portion of this. We are going to need to provide them plans for all the new buildings and explaining the traffic patterns and the needs for the classrooms and the lunch waves and all of the details that happen in each of those schools. We need to consider all of the spaces that are going to be used for gatherings like music or performance things and sports and fields. And we must provide with them with a budget that's very carefully crafted. Now that brings us to the issue of the state has certain guidelines that they project these costs will be a certain price per square foot. We already realized that in this particular economy, this minute today, that may not be enough. And the state is looking into revising those and bringing them up to date to the current kind of economic climate that we're in. But overall, it was a very, very positive call because each of those situations they brought up, we've already addressed. We've done the geo testing. We're doing those things. We've already decided to do more traffic studies and more enrollment studies. So we are right in the right place. They urged us to please include in any plan that we give them what we think is the absolute necessity for the ed specs and for any of the program needs, because they were quite clear that they did not want to have surprises along the way. If they had granted us a grant, if we're lucky to get the grant from them, they want to know what it's going to cost within pretty good certainty, so that we should make sure that we really research that. To that end, Collier's, the Board of Education, and we, the council, will have to be very careful to provide them with the right information. They are totally, totally supportive of our attempt to address the fastest growing increase in the enrollment, which would result in overcrowding of our elementary schools first. So although they did not completely say they were totally against a 6 to 8 middle school, they were very pleased to know that we did not include that 1,200 student school in our proposal. They felt that that would have been too large of school. So we are waiting to hear from them by the end of February what the final requirements will be to submit that grant. And I felt it was positive. I think Chairman Slocum can speak to that the conversation was very positive. They were very favorable about our plan. They looked at it very, very carefully. So before us tonight is going to be the decision as to whether the council will support the plan that we have put forward. Tim, anything to add to that? You were there.
I was there, and the elephant in the room, of course, was some understanding that state requirements might require a level of planning that would require an architect to be on hand, which would elevate our cost just to make a grant request in excess of our current referendum levels. That to me was very concerning and a non-starter. I tried to make that very clear, and I did. I think we're engaged with Collier's. They're a well-respected organization. They clearly haven't presented us with numbers that are seemingly fuzzy. It's all based on what the state requires. That's how they arrive at some of these budget numbers, based on class sizing, which is required by the state, and the ed specs, a term I've learned, a term of art. Basically, ed specs are what the kids create a need for. And the space around those kids, the hallways, the cafeterias, the playgrounds, all of that stuff. So those will all be brought up to speed, and they're working on those now, particularly in the North End School, where we now want to incorporate Darcy. That changes the ed spec from just an ordinary, typical elementary school. So that will be brought on. So we actually get a very good number, because number one, the council doesn't want to throw something out to the public and have a miss. We don't want to have that happen. I think the state doesn't want to have it happen, but it must happen more often than not. And probably in a town that's getting 90% of the funding from the state, doesn't care about its 10% overrun. When they're only paying 10%. Cheshire will care. So we don't want to go in with a miss. And I think to amplify what Sylvia said is that the committee going forward will make sure this council, so that ultimately the public knows what this referendum is going to cost us. And it's going to be, as Rob Orris loved to say, a heavy lift. And I don't like to lift anything heavy, but I know if I'm going to lift it, I want to know how heavy it is. So that's certainly going to be, our job number one. And that's about it. And so that will more or less conclude our report. And then maybe I will just mention in a motion that is coming up for us to vote upon, that there were included in that 2 motions that we will not vote upon this evening, but they are required by the state of Connecticut, and they will have to be ultimately voted upon by this council, specifically the referendum date and the referendum number, and then the appointment of a building committee. These are things that we obviously will be doing, but I don't want to vote on something we don't honestly know what it's going to cost us yet, and we don't know yet. We have the old number, but we don't have a current number. So that, while it's in our packets, is for information only. Okay, Mr. Talbot.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Quick question based on the report, and I'm sure we'll have further discussion as the referendum or the resolutions come up tonight. During the conversation with the school construction group, the grant group, was there talk about what the current reimbursement rate is? And the reason I bring that up is 2 weeks ago when Rhode Island Governor McKee did his State of the State address, he made some ARP funds available for school construction. I know that Governor Lamont is speaking tomorrow. I haven't heard it leaked that there's anything about school construction in his, but I guess that's a potential. Just wondering what the potential reimbursement to Cheshire is for the project.
Yeah, we weren't advised of any change in reimbursement numbers, but the question was not asked either. So we were operating in this meeting based upon the last meeting, which we understood the reimbursement rates to be what they were at the time. So again, I don't have an answer for you, Peter, directly on that.
And then just a quick follow-up, if I may. So, and we're still looking then at filing with the state by June 30. That's the cutoff
Yeah.
date?
That timeline that was presented at our last meeting, which was a Zoom presentation, has been updated. I had asked Arnett to make those available to us tonight. I'm not sure if she was able to do that yet, but I'll make sure you have the council has the latest up-to-date timeline. We're pretty much operating on the same schedule. We're marching towards a target of having just about everything done by, the April timeframe, just so we can fit this into our capital budget planning as well, because we do actually, in the budget cycle this year, want to have a capital budget that certainly includes this build out. So.
And I'd just like to add to that, indeed, the committee that's working to supervise and pull all these pieces together has everything following a very, very strict timeline. The ed specs are being developed as we speak by someone the Board of Education is working with, so they should be done by a certain day, and there are certain days that those things are going to be presented. So they're in a very specific timeline. So now things will change, but you'll see in further motions tonight, we need to approve some funding for traffic studies and for enrollment studies and things like that. So it's critical that we get this right, and we have to get it right. We can't just go on the seat of our pants, and it's important that each one of those steps gets done in a timely manner. State will not approve, and we will not be able to go back to them for extra money if we don't do it right. So we need to do it right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else, or shall we move along and save the other question? Oh, Mr. Jinks, go right ahead.
This may be for Sylvia. When do you think we will know a better sense of what the cost will be for the North End School?
Well, they're working on it, right? We have a meeting tomorrow afternoon. So as we talked earlier, we texted back and forth. Tomorrow afternoon, there's another meeting of this committee. We may have some more specific numbers. I don't know that there's a date certain for that. I know that by changing and adding the Darcy program to that school changes the square footage that are going to be required to be built there. But they've already started and are working very hard to go through those numbers to see if we were to continue to put it in the Highland School as we had originally planned. It was determined that the program would occupy more square footage than is available at Highland School, which would necessitate either adding additional space there, which is not practical because property that won't support the extra space to that school. And the state is not in favor of separating the program so that you have parts of it in one building and part in another. They want to support it as a single program. And they were in favor of that change to that school building. And in looking at the numbers to renovate the Highland School into making it fit Darcy School would be almost the same cost as building it new in the new school building. There was not, at that point, there was not a significant difference. There probably will be more cost, but not significantly in the long run when you look at all the other factors. But I can't tell you when that specific number will be there. Hopefully tomorrow they'll give us some more information.
Okay. I remember looking, I mean, we were on the SMC, a lot of the renovation and the build versus renovation costs were fairly similar.
Right,
So, which
right.
was interesting. And the enrollment study is due, when will we get those figures? Do you think?
That's being commissioned if we approve the cost to start that study. I've forgotten the date, honestly, Jim. I can look it up for you, but there's a date certain. I think it was the end of February or the first week in March. I mean, sometime
Yeah,
soon.
it's a
Yeah.
couple of weeks out. The ed specs are probably also about a week or a week and a half away, and they guide some of what goes on in that North End school. They just, those space requirements are driven by those specs, which now include the birth to 3. So we're just not able to come up with a good number, I would say probably for up to 30 days.
So, shouldn't we perhaps, I mean, this resolution that we're looking at here tonight without costs or without firm costs, without the enrollment study being done, it seems a little premature to me to vote on this tonight.
Say that again?
Well, we will be voting. Well, I'd rather have that conversation when the motion is made.
Okay.
Yeah, that's specific to a motion, and that's a fair and reasonable time frame, I would say, for that. So.
Okay.
Thank you. So here ends that report under old business, which will appear every agenda going forward. So you'll be in update city on that one. Okay, so under new business, we have under A call for public hearing for fiscal year 2022-23, general operating budget, water pollution control department fund operating budget, and the community pool fund operating budget. So I will read that resolution. Be it resolved, the town council will hold a public hearing at 6 o'clock on Tuesday, March 22nd, 2022 in council chambers, Town Hall, 84 South Main Street, Cheshire, Connecticut, to consider the proposed general fund operating budget for fiscal year 2022-23, the proposed water pollution control department fund operating budget for fiscal year 2022-23, and the community pool fund operating budget for fiscal year 2022-23. Be it further resolved, the town manager shall cause a notice of said public hearing to be posted and published according to the law. And I will restate the resolution number since I didn't mention it. It is resolution 020822-3. May I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Walsh. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously for a public hearing. Okay, this moves us to item B, which is the approval of the school modernization plan and authorization to apply for state grants for said projects. Mrs. Nichols.
Thank you. The resolution reads, be it resolved that the town council approves resolution 020822-4-A. Be it resolved that the town council accepts and approves the next generation phase 1 plan for the construction of a new elementary school and the replacement of Norton Elementary School, and will call for a referendum after approval of the capital appropriation for said plan.
We have a motion. We have a second from Mr. Walsh. Thank you. Discussion. Mr. Jinks, you may have wanted to start off.
Yeah, so what I was saying was that it seems a little premature to vote on this resolution without having a better sense of what the costs are, especially for the North End school, since the plan for that school is being changed to some degree with the addition of the Birth to 3 program. And then not knowing for sure what the enrollment studies are going to show us in terms of what the size of the schools may need to be. We have an idea based on the old study, and we have some expansion plan into the, or some expansion space into the plan, but we don't really necessarily know what those costs are. So if it sounds as though we're near getting some of these costs, and the enrollment study is not too far off, it seems to me that the resolution, we should vote on this once we have that information, so we have all the details.
Very fair and reasonable point. Any follow-up before I rebut? Any other questions? Mr. Talbot?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And you're probably going to answer this as part of the answer to Mr. Jinks, but I had the same question. Just I'm not sure actually what this, unless there's a requirement by the state that you have to get an approval into the record prior to going anywhere or something, that it just seems kind of strange that we're doing this. I know that one of the other ones later on, there's that you said, I guess, would not be called tonight. But there was one establishing the part of it that establishes the school's next generation building committee. That I would certainly be in favor of moving sooner rather than later. I have to be honest, and I brought this up the last time, that the group is very partisan right now. I think for appearances' sake and for just information flow sake, the sooner we can get a bipartisan group together, the better it is for all of us. So, thank you.
Fair and reasonable question and statement. There are 3 resolutions here that are requirements of the state of Connecticut. This first one we're doing tonight is simply to accept the request by the Board of Education to go forward with their plan. Obviously, to have arrived at their decision, they did the due diligence that we have been undertaking as well, based on the Collier's report. So we do have roughly numbers of what we're talking about. We do have basic properties identified, schools identified. We have invested additional funds in addition to those that we'll be requesting tonight, which brings us closer to the answer we all seek. This, for me, is not a resolution committing the town to approving, for this council approving of this as a capital budget item. And that's why I am not introducing this evening those 2 subsequent resolutions that are included in here, which will be required to be voted upon prior to submission to the state of Connecticut for the grant money. I know we're nowhere near setting up a building committee, and we're nowhere near knowing exactly the funds amount that we'll be seeking as a grant based on the total cost of the project. So that is, that leaves us in a more comfortable place because we're not voting upon that yet. We're simply voting upon acceptance of the request by the Board of Education to go forward with the information we have now and contribute additional expenditure to that end to arrive at the right price. And that's really the next big important vote. This now allows us to go forward. It's a requirement. It is a requirement. So I think the table's been set for some time. And this is just the time to vote on it, that we agree with the Board of Education. We're on the same page. We need to do this. That's my summary of how I interpret this vote tonight. Any fluff for the rest?
Let David talk.
Mr. Bowery?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see this vote as a step forward, not as a final step. I see it as one saying, Board of Ed, you voted overwhelmingly that this is the plan you want. SMC voted overwhelmingly for a similar plan with some updates and some changes, but I don't see the order of magnitude of the numbers showing that any other plan is going to move forward. I think we need to continue to show the Board of Ed that they need to plan for the educational specs for this, because this is what we intend to support. I think we need to show the community that, yes, there are still some outstanding issues, but that we are working on them, and that unless we're going to show support for this plan, I'm not so sure I would want to support the extra money to continue on this plan. So I'd like to show support for the plan that the Board of Ed, our fellow elected officials, overwhelmingly supported. And I would like to then support the next motion for available funds for them to continue the studies that need to be done, the traffic study, the update on the enrollment, and then work all of this in with the capital budget. I think we've had management working with the numbers as we knew them, and there will be some updates because of what's happening with the economy. But I really think we need to move forward with support for what the Board of Ed has moved forward with.
Thank you, Mr. Burry. Anyone else? Jim, I guess I would say, and Peter, I would just amplify, is that this is a necessary step that the fiduciary for the town of Cheshire accept the request or reject the request that's been made by the Board of Education, because they cannot go out and ask for the money. They are providing us with as many inputs as we provide them over time on this project and ultimately the community. So this is just a necessary step, which obviously shows the public and the school community that this is a serious project that we're embarking on. It's just not the final. It's not the final vote, and there will be opportunity for bipartisanships all along the way. The executive administrative committee, so to speak, is really just that. We're in on calls, we're in on meetings, we're making sure the ducks are in a row, and we're reporting as we need, so that you guys fully understand and can make the most comfortable vote decision you need to make when it comes time to make those big votes on the big dollars, because we will have that chance, and every voice will be very welcomed at that opportunity, and along the way too, by the way. So with that, there is a motion on the table.
Jim has a question, and I would like to make a comment.
Thank you. Mr. Jenks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to say one more thing. I'm not looking to put up roadblocks in the process by any means. I've voted in favor of school modernization every step of the way. I'm not going to start voting against it tonight, although I do feel like, the message to the public is going to be that the council approved the next generation plan, but I don't exactly know. I know the rough contours of that at this point, but there have been, we haven't met on this, on the revisions that have come about over the last few weeks or few months. So I just don't feel like I have the information to vote in favor of this at this point. I just feel like each step of the way, we should make sure we know, the public knows exactly what we're voting for. I understand procedurally why we need to do this right now. I guess I'm going to abstain for this vote, but certainly I'm supportive of school modernization.
To your point about what we're voting on, we are definitely voting upon the board's request for 2 new elementary schools to be constructed in the town of Cheshire for the consolidation of Darcy School into that North End school. And that's essentially it. And also for the closure of Darcy and the tear down of the old Norton. So those are essentially things that we know we are voting for tonight. I mean, we're not voting for another school plan. We're not voting for phase 2, which has been talked about and is felt to be very material to this plan going forward. But we're only taking this one bite at a time that's been presented to us by the Board of Education in a near unanimous vote. So, Mr. Talbot.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I apologize, Ms. Bavano. I guess, I was helped a little bit by the explanation. It was, at least this resolution is very confusing in that it says, we're approving the plan that was already approved by the Board of Ed, and basically we'll work through it in the capital budget and cause a referendum. Well, the natural process that we go through in the capital budget will get us the numbers, will come up with that stuff. And if we approve that, the referendum is triggered automatically. So I guess I was confused as to the reason why we're doing this on February 8th and not doing this as part of the capital budget process. I know there's a subsequent resolution.
Revolution, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Resolution, which is going to appropriate some money for some of the further studies that the state requires. But I guess this one to me was a head scratcher, and it may just be the wording.
If my mind, for example, said, well, it's a little too early to present this, I think it is necessary to have the assurances of the education community that this is, that this is actually, we are getting together and doing all this efforting to get us to point B, where we actually finally accept the money, and actually point C, get it to the state. So I see this as that stage. That's how I interpret it. Again, these are resolutions, perhaps not invented by the council. Sylvia.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was distracted, but I agree. I understand where you're coming from. I really do. But I think that in this case, this plan is a two-part plan. We are the fiduciary arm of this approval. The Board of Education has to develop the ed specs and do the educational part. That's not our job. Our job is not to tell them how to develop their educational specs. They've done that. They've said this is a plan that we can support. Now, I think it's important that the two of us work in concert, the two boards work in concert to be in support of a general plan. And there is a very detailed timeline. I'm surprised that you haven't gotten it, because we've gotten several timelines and it just keeps getting tighter and tighter. And they need to do their things before we can do our things. And we need to give them the money to be able to do those. So without approving the plan, I think it's premature to approve the money that they need to do that. So I think it's important that we approve the fact that we agree that they're doing their due diligence and presenting us with a good plan. And then we will give you the money to keep going to give us the right numbers. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I guess I would say that if we're approving the money, then we're pretty much approving the plan if
That's
we're
right,
approving the
eventually,
money. So are we doing something redundant?
Right.
Look,
So I don't think
I've said all along that the most important thing is school modernization. So I will support whatever motions are necessary to move this process along. It's just kind of confusing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry. Ms. Pavano.
Thank you. In order for the Board of Education to move forward, we as council have to give our approval for this to move forward. And this is what we're doing with this. We're giving approval for the council, for the Board of Education to move forward, along with appropriating money so that we can continue with the studies that are going to be necessary to move on. And we are dealing with deadlines, and we just have to keep moving. We have so much work that has already been done. We now are on a timeline, and we have to continue and go forward so that we do not miss the timeline. And we will have all the information, but we as a council have to approve this. The Board of Education can't approve it themselves. Thank you. I will be supporting this.
Mr. Walsh.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to echo what Ms. Nichols said and Mr. Slocum and Ms. Pavano said. We are the fiduciary arm of this town, and it is our role to make sure the money is spent in the right way, the right place. This, I have to agree with Peter, it was a little confusing when I read it, and the last sentence explained a little bit to me after approval of the capital appropriation for said plan. But the next resolution is we'll be voting on to appropriate funds to go for this. So I think, as Mr. Barry said, this is the first step, and we have to take these steps in order to do it. And I feel that as a member of this council, we were voted to make these decisions for this town, and we waited for the Board of Ed to make their decision. They have made their decision, and I think it's time for us to support that decision and move forward.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Anyone else? Are we ready to call for a vote on this? Okay, I'll call for vote then. All those in favor signify. Opposed? Abstaining? Okay, we have 8 for and 1 abstention. Thank you for that. Okay, Ms. Nichols, this brings us to C, which is the approval of additional appropriation for school modernization project and referendum preparation studies.
Thank you. Be it resolved that the town council approves resolution 020822-5. Be it resolved that the town council appropriates $55,000 from available capital planning accounts for further studies and consultants for the Cheshire Public Schools Next Generation Phase 1 plan, including but not limited to updated enrollment study, traffic and environmental studies, and grant application preparation assistance.
So motion, we have a second from Mr. Walsh. Discussion.
Basically, we've talked around this before, but the funds are necessary to give Colliers the ability to set up traffic studies, enrollment studies, and some of the other requirements that are smaller but add up to that $55,000 to enable them to get the grant application prepared in time, basically.
Any questions? Mr. Malone.
I just want to mention that I won't be voting or deliberating on this item because my firm is being considered to do the traffic work, so I just think it's inappropriate.
Thank you, Mr. Malone. Any other questions or comments? I'll call for a vote on this. All those in favor signify. Opposed? Abstaining. Okay. Let the record show that it was 8 in support and 1 abstention. This brings us to D, approval of recommended updates to personnel rules and regulations. Ms. Nichols.
Gee, this is a busy night, right? Be it resolved that the town council approves resolution 020822-6. Be it resolved that the town council approves amendments to the non-union personnel rules and regulations as presented as attached pursuant to the recommendation of the personnel committee.
Second. We have a motion. We have a second for Mr. Talbot. Discussion.
Okay, this is a, 49-page document that you've all been given. I hope you've read every single word of it. It is basically the town's personnel rules and regulations. There were several changes that were suggested by our labor council to be made, not significant. Many of them were just language updates and updates for things that kept things a little more modern. Some of these were done a long time ago. Bias rules, harassment rules, things like that, changing the wording. The personnel committee reviewed it. We feel that we recommend that you approve that as it was presented. And Lou, you're here. Do you need to explain more of that?
I'll take questions.
Yeah. Any questions?
I have a question, Lou. Does this essentially align us with state regulations or is it other municipalities that come up with this? Are these guidelines besides from the recommendations of our town attorney for labor? I mean, these things must have some guiding principle, like
Yeah, I
it
think
gets
what,
us through lawsuits and all these other
yeah, I think what
negotiations.
happened over time, the pension attorney in dealing with a pension matter with Jim noticed there was a need for something on rehires. One of the labor attorneys working on some of these complaints that we get from employees realized that we needed some punching up of the language. John Golick, when we changed insurance carriers last year, he was asked to produce the Recreation Department's molestation policy. When it came up at a meeting, somebody, Michelle in Human Services said, well, we probably should have one because we have people. The police chief said, gee, we should have it because, we have Police Explorer. So I think it was just a a need that there were other documents that have some of these things, but they're not in this manual. And it was thought by various attorneys that have worked for us that there's some improvements, and I think the document reflects that.
That was a sense I had from personnel, but I just wanted your point
Yeah.
on it. I appreciate that. Anyone else before we vote on this? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries with eight here and one absent. You don't call that anything but absent. Okay. Now we're moving along to the approval of the deputy building official job description. Ms. Nichols.
Personnel's been busy this month. Be it resolved that the town council approves resolution 020822-7. Be it resolved that the town council pursuant to the recommendation of the personnel committee approves the deputy building official job description as presented. And Lou, you may want to come back again. You have all had this in your packet. We need a second first, probably, right?
We have a second. Thank you, Mr. Walsh.
All right. It's in your packet. There have been changes in many departments as officials and employees and staff has changed. And this comes as a result of the building department getting fairly busy and needing some additional support. And Lou, you want to maybe go to all of the changes?
Yeah. Right now, we have 2 assistant building officials that are certified assistant building officials. This job description allows the possibility that if either of them attain the certification to be a building official, that they could then move to this position. So you're not moving a person to this position. You're giving the 2 assistants the ability that if they become certified as building officials, that they could ascend to this position.
And if I could add, nor are you creating a new funded position. This would simply be a lateral position from an existing funded position. Yes, with again, a slightly increased pay, but reflecting the fact that they have added value to us in the ability to step in for the building official, act on behalf of effectively a deputy building official is the idea.
Any questions?
So if one of the deputies or one of the other 2 employees attains this level, well, they're free to apply for another town job, another job in another town. This actually gets them to that level? Or am I misunderstanding this? If they're success.
No, to be a building official, the head inspector in some towns.
There's higher levels.
You have to be a certified building official.
Okay.
So right now, they both are certified to the level to be assistants. But time from time, they have the ability to sit for the exam.
Okay.
To become a building official. So I think what we're saying is if they get that extra certification and they're working here, they should be at a different level than the assistant.
Right, and I understand that, but they also could get in a car and go to another town. Obviously, they're enhancing their positions, which is fine. That's
Right.
what people do, and I'm all for that. It's not a guarantee we have a second person, though, to sign these things either. But that's no reason to not support it. I just wanted to make that point. Okay, anything else? Okay. All those in favor signify. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, we move along to F, the acceptance of Farmers Court as a town road.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Be it resolved that the town council approves resolution 020822-8. Be it resolved that the town council accepts Farmers Court as a town road conditional upon the filing of a maintenance bond and recording of a warranty deed for the roadway and the storm drain and sightline easement free and clear of all encumbrances.
Thank you, Mr. Veliver. Discussion.
Mr. Nawatney, would you like to discuss this? Since your name is on this? Thank you. Yeah, I don't want him to fall asleep. This is the Farm Meadows at Cook Hill subdivision.
Correct. Thank you. I guess I'll just say that the town road conforms to all our town standards. It's been inspected and verified. All the materials and compaction and everything are to the town standard. So the Planning and Zoning Commission, I know, recommended acceptance, and the engineering folks agree.
Thank you. Stay where you are because we have another one.
Yes, ma'am.
Please, please.
Any questions from anybody? I just had one, George. Farmers Court's been around a long time, about 4 years. So I guess that's just, the town won't take it till it's fully developed. I guess that's what it comes down to? Or is it when the developer decides that they want to get their bond back? How does this work?
Right, correct. It's when the developer requests acceptance. So I don't know the specifics on this one, but there could be any number of reasons where they might not have put the top coat down of asphalt until the very end because they didn't want to damage it during construction of various houses or something along that line. But you're right. It has been around a while, and
Yeah, I never would have driven on it if I didn't know it was a town road.
We actually we had to plow it this last storm because there was a little confusion there, but it's all ready to go.
Well, it was our fault, right? Okay, well, that was my question, so I guess there's none more. I'll call for a vote on this. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Welcome, Farmers Road. Court. Okay, now we have the acceptance of Monarch Court as a town road, another dead end. Ms. Bavano.
Yes, thank you. Be it resolved that the town council approves resolution 020822-9. Be it resolved that the town council accepts Monarch Place as a town road, conditional upon the filing of a maintenance bond and recording of the warranty deed for the roadway and storm drain, sightline easement free and clear of all encumbrances.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Veliver.
Mr. Nawani again, thank you.
I can play back my comments from before, but very, very similar. This is another road that conforms to town standards. All the materials, the compaction, and everything is up to our standards. So we recommended acceptance to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and they've sent it to the town council for final acceptance.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, call for a vote on this. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Nawani. Okay, H is going to be the approval of the Trinity Health situation, and because I feel we need to go into executive session on that, I'm going to move that to the end of the agenda, okay? We will come back to that. I is the renewal of the annual lease for a portion of the former Casertano property. Mr. Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Be it resolved that the town council approves resolution number 020822-11. Be it resolved that the town council approves the successor lease agreement for January 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2022 with Alex Arisco for a portion of the former Casertano property for agricultural purposes under the terms as presented and attached, and authorizes the town manager to execute and lease said lease agreement.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second, Ms. Bavano. Thank you. Mr. Walsh.
This is the property that we are currently looking at to build the north end for the next generation phase 1. So it is a year-to-year lease. We don't foresee doing anything on that before the end of this year. This lease, I believe, our town manager could probably explain better, will allow us to do certain tests on that property so that if we are going forward with the school modernization, we will have access to that land. I don't know if you have anything else to.
No, that's exactly correct. I was just going to remind you that we did amend this agreement 2 years or 1 year ago. I can't remember. And section 14 is what you're referring to, Mr. Walsh, the lesser to enter. to conduct surveys, analysis of the property, land, geophysical, biospheric components. So we do have that right now, and that will remain for this next year. So any land analysis we have to do, we can enter as the landlord. Thank you.
Any questions or further amplifications, Mr. Malone?
I just had one question for Attorney D'Onofrio. In the section 14 that you have in there, which is obviously necessary, it talks about conduct surveys and analysis of the property. Is analysis sufficient enough to, I might have thought the word investigation would be more appropriate, but does analysis cover that we would be able to go in there, do soil borings and the like? Okay, then I'm satisfied.
Anything else? Okay, seeing no more banter on this one, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, we move to J, the acceptance and appropriation of $18,000 from the Regional Water Authority for the sale of a pipe sleeve. Mr. Walsh.
Be it resolved that Town Council approves resolution number 020822-12. Be it resolved that the Town Council accepts and appropriates the $18,000 received from Regional Water Authority from the pipe sleeve agreement to a special revenue account to be used to support the marketing and land use analysis and testing of state parcel to be deeded for town, and be it further resolved that the Town Council authorizes the creation of a special revenue account for this purpose.
Thank you. Mr. Veliber, you're seconding that? Discussion, Mr. Veliber? My apologies.
Oh. Oh, perfect. Yeah, no, I think this will be, I think this is good. So we've got the 18, and Sean, would you like to, we talked about the creation of a special revenue account for that purpose. I think that's an interesting idea. So, but if you could explain it further.
Sure. So as the council's aware, we've been working on for a couple of years now this sort of unique conveyance of property in the north end to the town from the state. That does come with the condition that the town will market it for economic development purposes, and then the proceeds to be given to the state upon the sale of that property. While we certainly appreciated that legislation, we still do, it didn't contemplate any funding for us to do said marketing and testing and design work that we might need to do to market the property appropriately. As we discussed when the council authorized us to sell the pipe sleeve access to the RWA for $18,000, this money feels most appropriate to continue to further our efforts to develop that parcel on the eastern side of Route 10. And so the purpose of a special revenue fund is, rather than taking this in as general revenue in the current fiscal year, only to either be added to surplus and go back to the fund balance, this would hold the $18,000 in a special revenue fund that we could use over the next couple of years, again, for marketing, real estate fees, analysis, anything we need to do on the parcels. So that's the intention of the special revenue fund. It will last more than one fiscal year from an accounting standpoint. And we feel this is a good use of this money that again was tied to the north end itself.
Very good. Anything else? Any questions? Mr. Walsh.
This is for Mr. Kimball, I guess. This sleeve was something that was placed under 691 many years ago by the town. Is that correct? And this is basically saving the RWA a lot of issues, because originally the pipe was going to go under the bridge. Is that so? So this is a win-win for everybody. We're getting money for this, and I just want to make sure that the people understand that we're getting money for something that we forgot we had, kind of, and the RWA is going to not have issues for trying to heat water from under a bridge throughout the winter. So I think it's a great thing for both of us. So.
Yes, I mean, to your point, I think it is a win-win. Initially, the town, and I guess more specifically WPCA, put in the pipe sleeve. It's an iron pipe sleeve that runs under 691 that was put in before 691, or as 691 was being planned and construction was set to begin, I think, the following year. So again, a lot of foresight there that they were anticipating possible use for sewer. As folks are aware now, that sewer line is going to be running down Dickerman Road. It's actually currently closed for that purpose as the work is happening in the roadway. So that does leave, and the WPCA has already agreed, they don't have any or foresee any future need for this for sewer. So that opened up the option to use it for water, which we know is another very important utility that we need to develop the north end. And so it was something of a win-win. And to your point, not something I think the town was fully aware of until we were able to locate specifically where it was just in the last year. So that's where we are.
Terrific. Okay, I guess this brings us to further questions or a vote. I guess we're ready to vote. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, K is the call for a public hearing for the appropriation of $1.5 million to the Board of Education and amendment to expenditures and revenues of FY 21-22 Board of Education operating budget. I'll read that resolution. This is Resolution 020822-13. Be it resolved, the Town Council will hold a public hearing at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, March 8th, 2022 in Council Chambers, Town Hall, 84 South Main Street, Cheshire, Connecticut, to consider amending the total expenditures and revenues for FY 21-22 Department of Education from $77,001,052 to $78,501,052 and authorizing $1.5 million additional appropriation to FY 21-22 Department of Education operating budget from ARPA funds. Be it further resolved, the town manager will cause a notice of said public hearing to be posted and published according to law. We have a motion before us. May I have a second? And then I'll call for a vote. We have a second from Mr. Jenks? That's fine. I'm good with Mr. Jenks. All those in favor? Okay, thank you. Motion for a public hearing passes unanimously. Action and public hearing should be able to take place at our March meeting. Okay, with that, we are moving along to the approval of a bid waiver request from Public Building Commission for cables for access system at the Police Department. Ms. Pavano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Be it resolved that the Town Council approves Resolution 020822-14. Whereas the Public Building Commission recommends awarding a contract to furnish and install access controls for the locker rooms in the police station to Fusion Cable Systems for $5,750. Whereas Fusion Cable Systems has extensive knowledge of the police station and demonstrated satisfactory performance on similar projects for the town. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Town Council, pursuant to Section 78C11 of the Town Charter, approve a waiver of bid for the contract to Fusion Cable Systems to furnish and install access controls for the locker rooms in the police station.
Thank you, Ms. Pavano. Second, please. Mr. Jenks, thank you, sir. Discussion.
Mr. Nawatney, would you like to take this also? You're very popular tonight.
Thank you. Thank you again. I'll try to be brief, which is a challenge for me. But the Public Building Commission requested this in the interests of, I think, time expediency and mainly cost expediency or efficiencies. So the town has contracted with Fusion Cable Systems many times in the past for a lot of work. As part of the police department, the access controls are to be supplied by the owner, and Fusion Cable gave a price to the contractor that's doing the work, the general contractor. And to do that, they had to use prevailing wage, and there's markups, as you all know, and that sort of thing, overhead profit for the contractor. The general contractor puts on top of it. So when you add all that stuff in, it comes to about $3,000 more than the base price, which is goes to show you why some of the prevailing wage things show up with the legislative delegation year after year, as they add to a lot of the costs. But be that as it may, the PBC wanted me to come before you and request that you do a bid waiver for $5,750 to Fusion Cable Systems to allow the town to contract with them directly.
Okay, that's a pretty clear explanation. Any questions? Okay, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? We just saved the town $3,000. Thank you, PBC. Okay, M is the approval of final design for the Cheshire High School HVAC project and authorization to go to bid. Ms. Pavano.
Thank you. Be it resolved that the town council approves resolution 020822-15. Be it resolved that the town council pursuant to section 2-26 of the Code of Ordinance and the recommendations of the Public Building Commission approves the final design for the HVAC improvements at Cheshire High School, and be it further resolved that the town council authorizes the Public Building Commission to go out to bid for this project. Again,
We have a motion, we have a second, Mr. Talbot, thank you. Discussion.
Mr. Nawatney again.
Happy to be here. So I'll be very brief on this one. This is a pretty straightforward project. There's currently in all these classrooms, there's unit ventilators, unit heaters that serve individual classrooms. This is going to remove those or block them off as the case may be, and put in rooftop units that take care of a number of these classrooms, up to 13 classrooms if the prices are with the PBC. So that's the request, is to go to bid and see what the actual prices are and come back to the council for final verdict.
Perfect. So this is a motion basically, if approved, to start something. Okay, that's terrific. Okay, so all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, George. Good job.
Thank you, George.
Okay, now we move on to something very exciting for the town. The award bid of landscape, architectural, and engineering services for Bartland Park South Phase 1. Mr. Malone.
Apologize about that. Be it resolved, the town council approves resolution number 0208822-16. Be it resolved that the town council approves the agreement with Weston and Sampson for landscape, architectural, and engineering services for Bartland Park South Phase 1 in the amount of $520,000 with the contract details as presented, and directs the town manager to execute said agreement.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Talbot, for the second. And thank you, Mr. Talbot and Mr. Mylone, for efforting this through to this point. So with that, John?
Yes, the selection committee was made up of the town manager, our Parks and Rec director, the chair of the Parks Commission, a vice chair, and one member, and then Peter and myself. And on Thursday, January 27th, we interviewed 3 firms who had submitted in response to the request for proposals for this activity. The selection committee unanimously felt that Weston and Sampson was the most qualified firm and most best suited to perform these services, and but their fee was substantially higher than some of the other firms. We asked them if they were negotiable, and after the interviews, asked our town manager and parks director to sit down with them and see if they would reduce their fee substantially, which the town manager and park director were able to get them to do. It was approximately $100,000 reduction in fee, which we all felt was appropriate for the work that was anticipated. And then subsequently, the committee reconvened and unanimously approved moving forward with that number.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Mr. Chair, for asking me to serve on this panel. I said this the other night publicly at the Parks and Rec Commission without his presence, so I thought it was only fair to say this in public tonight in his presence, that Mr. Mylone's expertise in this area was absolutely invaluable to this process. And I just wanted to thank him for being part of this and for helping the rest of the panel along to some very complicated issues. But I absolutely will support the resolution tonight.
Thank you for that, Mr. Talbot. Is there anyone else before I make a little comment? I would like to thank the committee, John Golick, who basically is staff to this, Parks and Recs Director, and of course, members of the Parks and Recs Commission. I do not recall who they were, but if you guys mention them, they can get the accolades they deserve. Mike O'Donnell and
And Chairman Duffy.
Chairman Duffy. Okay. Obviously, the group met and did a good job. They produced a result I'm happy with. And I think the council is certainly happy with it. So if there's no further commentary on this, we'll call for a vote to get this thing moving.
If I could just quickly,
Oh, please,
only because
Sean.
I just handed it out, I think from their presentation, and I think also good, certainly evidence that Weston and Sampson is very excited and committed to working with the town and seeing this through, as they've already done some great work for us. But you will see there before you some 3D renderings that they put in, included in their presentation, showing really what the park should look like. And it was the first time we got to see them in the interviews, and I thought I'd like to share those. Thanks to John Golick for printing them out for tonight. But really, I think their knowledge of where they've taken us and all of the community engagement that they've participated in over the last 2 years is really going to help see this through. And we're all incredibly excited, as I know you are too. So just want to say thank you to that and appreciate your support.
And I appreciate that input, and these renderings are very good. Is there any way to come up with a sort of a timeline for the public at this point? Are we really waiting for some designs to come actually through and bidding to go out?
I would say that during the interviews, we asked about timelines, and there was a general consensus that it was possible, not necessarily guaranteed, possible to complete design and have the project out to bid at year end so that construction could commence in the spring of next year. Is that consistent with what we?
That's correct. Yeah, that's our goal, and we're going to try to stick as aggressively as possible to that. And working with Weston and Sampson, I think we have their commitment there.
So it's fair enough to state it's really a 2-year project at this point.
Probably, yes.
Within a year's time, they would complete that work, presumably. Okay. Thank you for that. We'll keep our feet to the fire on this. So that's good. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Excuse me, I'm going to take a drink. John, did you want to say something?
Yeah,
I'm
if
sorry.
Mr. Gullik, I mean.
Briefly, because I put something together, a little timeline of who we are. Well, not timeline to, what's taking place so far, and then identifying people that are. And then publicly, I did want to thank the Vote Yes group. There's a group of people here. You're done. Just go to the mic, because I don't think. I saw you were here.
I was remiss in not inviting you up. My apologies. I figured you want to be like George and not talk a lot.
Usually most times. So what I wanted to do was, well, first I can answer your question on the timeline. I think we're going to convene with Ryan Chmielewski probably this week. I am anyway, just to kind of set our bearings and start charting the course. As far as the rest, I think there's going to be site investigation coming up in the next month. There's probably a permitting phase the next 3 to 4 months. And I think, like John Mylone said, probably at the year's end, going out to bid, and then project completion, probably the fall of 24, if all goes well. So I handed to you just a quick timeline of where this journey began. I started in May of 2019, and right away was put to the fire with doing the master plan concept June 25th of 2019. And you could read the rest of kind of like important highlight moments of this 2.5-year journey so far. Then you'll see that there was the master plan concept and architectural engineering review teams, the first one, and then the second one. And then I felt it necessary. There was the Vote Yes group that I had met with prior to referendum in the period that I was allowed to speak and work with them and answer questions. In the short time that they had prior to, it was basically 2 months before the referendum, they were quite instrumental in spreading the word, getting lawn signs out. They developed a beautiful
informational trifold that kind of answered a lot of questions for the public, what to expect. And then they also staffed a table at the Fall Fest all day long and, was there to answer questions and to show people what the project was going to entail. So those people, and if I mistakenly missed the name, I apologize in advance, but I think this is most of the group that I had met a couple of times with. And they really, I'm very appreciative of their efforts. Heather Fitzgerald, Rob Merritt, Scott Del Grego, Nick Mesite, Sharon Puhala, Robin Akampora, John Bartow, Jeff Pangaro, Gina Watts, Mike Bowman, Lee Bailey, Eric Bailey, Joe Paul, and then Xavier Lederer. And then finally, really town council, town manager Kimball, thank you for your wisdom, your sponsorship, and the funding support of this project. It will really supplement and create a crown jewel of parks that will be like none other in the area. And it'll be a fun, exciting destination for residents of Cheshire for years to come. Thanks.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you for keeping me on task. I should have had you up here first. Had George not come up before you, that probably would have happened. Okay. I might be talking myself out of a job, Mr. Walsh. Oh,
All right, be it resolved that the town council approves resolution number 020822-17. Be it resolved that town council appoints Tim Slocum as the Naugatuck Valley Council of Governments representative for the town of Cheshire through December 31st, 2023.
Second.
motion.
This is basically just a formality.
Mr. Talbot, now you can sell me.
This is just a formality that our chair normally gets this position. He said he promises to go to every single meeting and bring back notes to all of us. So I'm fully in favor of this.
Okay. Any questions, Chair? Any before I accept this lofty position? I love COGS. Anyway, I'll call for a vote then. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Now, I'm going to ask that we, well, I guess we can go through all the status supports and then go back to, we'll just get all that sort of business done. And so we'll start then with the town manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will direct you to page 3, having covered the first 2 pages of COVID updates earlier. For the economic development update, a couple of businesses opening: Claire Vision Optometrist just next door, and Remax Rise Realty at 1079 South Main Street. Sakana Asian Fusion Bistro is under construction in the Cheshire Shopping Center. Rebel Interactives submitted their renovation plans to the town building department last week. As we talked about, the Pipe Sleeve Regional Water Authority has pulled their water line through the sleeve on 691. And as I said before, the sewer line work on Dickerman Road is commenced. We're still working on a phase 1 environmental site assessment that we're hoping to be performed on before accepting that property at 691 from the state of Connecticut. Ball and Socket has continued their renovation and fit out for phase 1. Building 2 work continues, and their contractors are on site for hopefully a May 1st Sweet Claude's opening. And earlier today, Andrew and I toured the new Counterweight Brewing Company facility that's still under construction, Diane Court. They've had some supply chain delays, but the building's quite impressive. They're working with building, Chesbrook Planning and Zoning, Fire on their final inspections and approvals. And their opening date does remain to be determined for some equipment, but hopefully March or maybe April. Eversource tree trimming for 2022. Eversource has notified us they'll be doing 93 miles of scheduled tree trimming this year, beginning this spring, 34 miles of backbone maintenance, and 59 miles of scheduled side road tree trimming. You'll see a map about 3 or 4 pages later of the roads that Eversource will be trimming on this year. Congratulations to 2 DPW crew members, Jack Morley and Jeff Schiavi. They completed a 6-week program from the Public Works Academy, Yukon T2. And we just thank them for continuing their own development here to the betterment of the town. The town has submitted the PEG-PSHA grant in the amount of $33,300 in January for upgrades to the town's live broadcasting equipment for board, committee, and commission meetings. And just a sort of public service announcement from the Regional Water Authority has been asking us to spread the word, and some folks may have already seen this in their own bill last month or at the end of last month, but Regional Water Authority is switching to monthly billing. We have signs up you'll see in our lobby here and at the library and the senior center that they provided for us. But this changes from the 3-month billing that everyone has probably grown accustomed to in the past, but a monthly billing was deemed easier to budget for and better all around for folks. And so that's something the RWA is asking us to spread the word. So I'm doing that here. If you have any questions, you can go to their website. And a few upcoming council and subcommittee meetings are listed there. Happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any, Mr. Kimball? Okay, that's good. I'll get to my agenda again. Reports to the committee, reports of the committees of the council. I'll simply start on my left, Mr. Mylone. Any report? This would be committees of the council, not liaisons.
No report.
Okay. Ms. Vano, planning?
Yes, planning, we had an organizational meeting. We're meeting this week. And I will be bringing back to the council what our agenda is and some of the items that we want to see the council bring to the council. So that will be coming. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Favano. Mr. Belliber.
Well, thank you. One of the big ticket items has been addressed, but we do have some more items that are going to be coming up. So there will be a meeting to address things like marijuana on town properties and also some other items that may come before the Ordinance Review Committee, including one that was brought up at the last meeting, potentially for personnel, in conjunction with personnel for town clerk and other recording programs. So processes.
Thank you, Mr. Belliber.
Personnel's meeting, we will be having another official meeting in about probably a week from now. We're doing some preliminary agenda planning. As you saw by tonight's agenda, we've been busy. And there's a referral coming tonight that we will have to address. And as David said, we're trying to sort of streamline the process of clerking the town meetings to make sure that they are done evenly across the board with the same recommendations to all of the clerks. So that will be coming. And there are a couple of other issues. We'll keep you posted.
Walsh.
There's no report.
Mr. Bowery.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. While we were meeting, Assistant Town Manager Talbot sent us the agenda for Budget Committee meetings. They will start with March 10th, when the town manager makes his presentation of the overall budget, and it will be basically Tuesdays and Thursdays. We're pretty much going to start at 6 o'clock, and we are going to try to have a goal of ending around 8 o'clock. So we're not late. I heard you loud and clear last year. Going till 10 or 11 o'clock at night just doesn't cut it, and I understand.
Okay. Are most of those meetings going to be in person? Is that your thinking? Or are you going to do hybrids or?
I think it's going to be a hybrid, and I think what's going to happen is maybe for the presentations, the earlier meetings, it will be in Zoom form. But I would like, once all the presentations are made of all the departments by early April, I'd like us to then have in-person meetings for when we do the negotiations of what items we want and don't want and that type of thing, and the updates and stuff by then.
Right. Okay. And then for the final meeting, there will be pizza.
Sorry, sir?
For the final meeting, there will be pizza for the, at least
I
Mr.
would be
Belliber.
happy to provide that. If you all sit through coming to these meetings, we'll have a little pizza contest. Who likes which one better in town or something?
Okay. Oh, that's good. There's a fight. There's a fight you didn't need to start, but that's okay. Okay, excellent. Then we go on to referrals. I have a referral for the amended library deputy director job description to the personnel committee, and I'm adding a referral as well to ordinance to review the rules of procedure for the various committees and commissions of the council, to just bring us up to speed, anything that speaks to attendance guidelines or things like that. We all have spoken that we really want to have better committees and commissions and give them the right directions and perfect members. So if we can get a start there, I think that's a good start to take. Thank you for that. So with that, we'll move along to liaison reports. Again, I'll start on my left. Mr. Malone.
The building commission did meet, had a couple of new members who weren't sworn in yet, but they were in attendance and they're making progress.
Thank you very much. Ms. Padano.
I watched the Board of Ed on TV actually, and that's when they voted to bring this plan forward for the school renovation, school project.
Very good.
So-
Mr. Belliber.
So
No
it's a-
report. Oh, sorry. Ms. Nichols.
No report, missing a meeting tonight.
Mr. Walsh.
I did have my first opportunity to attend the WPCA meeting last week, and it's a good group of people there who are passionate, and I'm looking forward to the next meeting, which will be at the waste treatment plant. So I haven't been there yet, so I'm really looking forward to seeing it. So.
Very good. Do you want to take anybody along with a honey wagon or anything like that? Or okay, okay. Mr. Bowery.
In the old days, I would have advised you to bring a mask, but they've done much better job there, and you don't necessarily need one when you go there. In terms of the smell, I meant for the other reason, but yeah, the pension board met. They have a quarterly meeting, and quite frankly, the results have been very good and beating the mark significantly. So that should be reflected in the operating budget. Hopefully, I know you use old numbers. You go back to like the summertime, if I remember correctly, rather than.
It is back to July
calendar year.
1st. And
Yeah.
our preliminary numbers, actually, to your point, are very favorable. Unfortunately, just as when we have downturns, they smooth them over 5 years. When you have a great year, as the market
Mhm.
was up July 1st, they smooth that over 5 years too. So we'll benefit for the next 4 years, but
Yeah.
it's not
So
a
they're
win.
working hard and do a good job.
Good. Mr. Talbot.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thankfully, both of my reports were addressed in resolutions tonight, so I am good, sir.
Excellent. Mr. Jenks.
No report.
Thank you. Well, that concludes our reporting. So do we have any appointments for boards and commissions this evening?
We do, but before we do that, we have a little housekeeping job. If you all were watching the last couple of meetings, we had some kerfluffles with appointments. So I have some changes that I need the council to approve. Minor changes, but I ask you to look at your packets, their email addresses for people, their telephone numbers, their correcting the spelling of people's names, and the changing of a term limit, and they have been submitted to the town clerk. You all have it in your packet, so or don't you? I think you do. You need me to tell you exactly what they are? So if I have your approval to forward those on to.
Mr. Talbot will give you a second.
Yeah, will you give me a second, right? Okay, so there you go. And then as part of this, I have some nominations to bring forward. This one is for Jennifer Johnson to be appointed to the library board. It's a new appointment filling the vacancy of Mark Hostage. The term of office is from today till January 31, 2026. She's a Republican. I would like to bring forth Douglas Johnson, also a new appointment to fill the vacancy of Peter Nichols on the Economic Development Commission, present to 1/31/2026, and he's a Republican. And Don Naito to the Public Building Commission. It's a renomination, term of office from February 1, 2022 to January 31, 2026.
Mr. Chair, I'm happy to second those, and I bring forward the following nominations of my own, all of which are Democrats. Sherry Steckloff, it is a renomination to Youth and Human Services, term of office from 2/8/22 to 1/31/24. Tim Roy is a nomination to fill the vacancy of Abdul Ghani to WPCA. The term of office is 2/8/22 to 1/31/24. Jeff Pangaro is a nomination to replace Jeremy Bytel on the retirement board. I know that'll make Mr. Jaskat happy. 2/8/22, 1/31/25 is that term of office. James McKenney, renomination to Public Building Commission, 2/8/22 to 1/31/26. Paul Fracas, a renomination to the Park and Rec Commission, 2/8/22 to 1/31/26. Harold Kramer, renomination to Library Board, 2/8/22 to 1/31/26. Carol Doheny, a nomination to replace Helen Wilson on the Historic District Commission alternate position, 2/8/22 to 1/31/25. And finally, James Doheny, a renomination to the Building Code Board of Appeals, term of office 2/8/22 to 1/31/26.
And I will happily second all of those.
Normally discuss nominees. We just go ahead and vote. So I see we will do that if we're all set. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you, new volunteers. We welcome your service. Yeah,
Here
we'll
for you.
bring them to you at the end of the meeting.
Yep.
Okay. Town attorney reports and communications. I presume none. Thank you very much. You've sat there so resolutely and silently tonight. I thank you for that. Of course, this is billable hours. He did. And with that, we now move to council communications, letters to the council. Any members have letters to report? Comments? Okay. I don't either. And then what we're going to do then is I'm going to ask that we go into executive session for the purposes of discussing item H. I believe it's declared H. Correct me if I'm wrong. I guess I could turn over my agenda. It is. Okay. Item H on the agenda, which deals with the ambulance contract and possible litigation. And the motion to include the town attorney, the town manager, the assistant town manager, Mr. Nowotny, and any other member of staff that I failed to name? Noel, thank you. Okay. And the motion, thank you very much. We have a motion to second. All those in favor? And just before we do go into executive session, I want to assure the public there's no voting done in executive session. We'll come out and act upon that contract motion item after we come up.